Hi, friends. Welcome to the Mobile Bev Pros podcast, a podcast dedicated to providing mobile bar professionals with the information they need to succeed. I'm your host and fellow mobile bar owner, Sarah Murphy. Each episode, I'll be bringing you interviews, knowledge, anecdotes, or opinions with the goal of assisting you in building a profitable, sustainable, and scalable mobile bar business that will support the lifestyle you dream of. I'm excited for today's episode, so let's get started. For everyone who doesn't know, this is Sarah De Pasquale. Is that how you say it?
De Pasquale, you're close.
De Pasquale. Okay, awesome. I went to school with some Pasquales, so I had that part.
Yeah, for sure.
We are going to talk about phone photography, which I'm super excited about because I have a very fancy Nikon camera that I almost never use because it's so clunky and I'm just inexperienced with it. But I always have my phone on me at events, obviously. And so I would love to learn how to take better pictures with it. I guess to start, I would say, what phone do you use?
I have a OnePlus, so I don't have an iPhone, but I think you can really take good pictures as long as you get your lighting correct with any phone that you have.
And do you, I'm an iPhone user. I've been an iPhone user probably since the first iPod came out. I'm probably never going back, but I am super jealous, I think, of the Google phones and the Android phones because I feel like their cameras are so much better.
The camera I have like 3 separate cameras on my phone. So I have like a macro and I have a portrait. Like I've got a bunch. And if you have a portrait mode, definitely try to utilize that for photography.
Yeah. And to clarify for those who don't know, portrait mode puts kind of a blurry-ish background, but also like hyper clarifies like what's in the foreground, right?
Yeah. So it makes the background go into what is called a bokeh, which is very, not in focus, very creamy. And then it brings whatever you're focusing in into the forefront of your pictures. So that's going to, put all eyes on that cocktail or your menu or your bar or whatever you're trying to take a photo of.
Right. Yeah. And so iPhone does have a portrait mode, which I think I use with varying levels of success. It is, in my opinion, specifically programmed and designed to do best with faces and people. So sometimes when I'm using it for cocktails or something, it's not as, I think, the results I think are kind of like meh.
You can still achieve that bokeh without using the portrait mode, and you can do a lot of that post-processing, editing-wise, and you don't have to, I know there was Lightroom talk last week, and I use Lightroom. I am a photographer, so I shoot with a Nikon, and I shoot weddings and things, and Lightroom and edit with those. But if I'm just using my phone, there's a lot of mobile apps that you can use to achieve the look that you want if that portrait mode isn't going to work for you, if your phone doesn't have a portrait mode, any of that.
Yeah. So aside from Lightroom, what apps do you use?
I use Snapseed pretty much throughout the board. And that's great. That'll let you, like adjust lighting. It has a tilt shift. So you can focus on whatever your drink. You can hit that tilt shift and then you can blur out that background that we're trying to achieve with the portrait mode anyway. And awesome. I think it's a Google ran app, so it's pretty smart. Like it's got a lot, and you can add text to your photos and you can do everything. I use that app almost consistently across the board. I try not to use the Instagram filters. A lot of times it kind of like will make your photo fuzzy or just won't maybe get the lighting that you want it to.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's like, a dozen of them. And so like if you're using the same dozen filters that everyone has access to, it kind of removes some of that uniqueness to your photos.
Agreed.
I use Color Story a lot. It is a paid app, but it's not terribly expensive. And they have, 100 different filters. I found that I like about 5 of them.
Right.
For my kind of personal preference, the way it edits. I like to be somewhat consistent. But they have an option, like a ton of options, like crops and, all sorts of, and they're super easy to use. And they also have an Instagram story piece, which I think is nice. I don't do as much with that piece as I probably should, but I found it super easy to use. Whereas Lightroom to me was a little, I'm not a photographer, a little daunting.
Yeah, Lightroom it's a heavy program. It's it's geared towards photographers. So it's definitely, there's a ton of things you can do. It's great, but it just is probably a little overwhelming to some people.
Yeah, that's me. I want something that's like one step above what Instagram can give me, but down below Lightroom. So I'll have to check out SnapSpeed.
Canva's good too, but I tend to edit my photos before I drop them into Canva. Canva has a lot of templates if no one uses it for Instagram stories. They've got a ton of free stuff, a ton of free graphics. It's really fun to play around with.
I don't know what I would do without Canva, honestly. I do pretty much all of my digital marketing through Canva. And I pay for it. There is a free version. I don't know what's included in that because I've paid for it for so long. But yeah, I also will wait till my photo is kind of done being edited to drop it into Canva.
I just don't think Canva works for editing purposes.
The one thing that I do love about Canva for editing purposes that is brand new, and I've only used it a couple times and never on a photo, weirdly, usually on like another digital asset that I've pulled in, is the background removal.
Oh, I didn't know that even existed.
Yeah. So if you have like a picture of your child or something and you want to remove the background, it'll just automatically do that. And then you could just, drag it over a new background or whatever, which might be a cool idea to do with cocktails.
That is definitely a cool idea to do with cocktails.
Like just take a generic photo of your bar and then just drop a bunch of cocktails on the counter.
You could definitely do that. It might look as organic as we all want it to look, but
right. Terrible cocktail photography, but fun. Share your Instagram so people can pull you up.
Oh, okay. My Instagram's The Unbridled Bar. I do a lot of recipe sharing. I tend to get a lot of good feedback when I share recipes. So every time I set up for a tasting, I try to pull my big camera out or just my phone if I don't have that much time and take pictures of what we're tasting in actual glasses as opposed to plastic. And then that way I can use those, when I want to share a recipe. But I do try to share quite a bit of recipes. People really I get a lot of feedback from them.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about kind of Instagram last week. And then we were talking about faces do really well, recipes do really well, groups of cocktails do really well, and pictures of the bar do really well almost every time.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got you pulled up. This one's really pretty.
Yeah, this one's really pretty. So it's really about lighting, I would think. This is all naturally lit. The sun was shining into the back of the bar, so I was standing in front of my horse trailer, shooting towards the inside of the bar. So the light was just coming right behind that marquee sign. The marquee sign's on, but it doesn't really glow a lot. It was just hitting that nice backlight. That's kind of what I tend to try to look for when I'm shooting a drink is the backlight. You want to be able to see the drink, you want to see the color. People want to see the ingredients. They don't want to just look at this murky cocktail but they don't really know what's in it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Lighting, specifically natural lighting, tends to be key for cocktails.
Absolutely.
I actually do have an entire kind of photography setup that I had from another lifetime ago. It's got like the little tripod lights.
Yeah.
And you can like put it through, you could put it in a light box if you wanted. And I am never happy with that lighting, even though it's kind of a professional lighting setup, as much as when I just have the good old sun.
Agreed. I kind of set up a bar cart while I could into my office, though my office is a little dark today, but you can kind of see, let me see if I can flip my camera around. Oh, there you go. I just have all the light coming behind the glasses, and it is dark in here anyway, but those pictures would still come up nice because you'd be able to see the light coming through the liquid.
Yeah.
And then I always try to add some things, like if we are using a certain glass, like these are from Love and Victory. It's a really pretty set. I bought them from a local bar shop here in Jacksonville, but she will almost always reshare my cocktails if I, tag her in the posts. So those are always really good. I always try to use local products and stuff like that. I always try to have some things, I used these edible flowers in the drink or lavender. I always try to set my little stage up. That way people just kind of know they want, oh, look, there's a lime in that drink. Maybe that's something I'm interested in. I think, photos speak a lot before they even start reading a caption.
Oh, agreed. I think we might have mentioned this the last time, but if the photo isn't worth pausing for, they'll never even get to the caption, right? They'll just kind of scroll on.
Right. They don't care what the recipe is. They just want to make sure it's cute.
Okay. So far we've said portrait mode is kind of key. Backlight is super helpful. And then to add kind of some visual interest of some sort, whether it's a garnish or glassware.
Sign, your pick, any of that stuff people want to see. I don't know if people are familiar with the macro setting on their camera or if their camera has a macro setting, but that's it looks like a little flower. If you have that setting, it is meant for extremely up close. Think like like a butterfly on a flower or a caterpillar that you want to take a picture of. That's also really good for over the top photos. Like if you want to take a picture of what your garnish setup looks like, a lot of times I'll switch to the macro mode and that'll allow you to get real close. You can see a bunch of the details. If you're doing like an orange peel, like crumble on top or anything, it just gives you more definition in your photo. And that's a lot of people I think don't know what that setting is, but if you have it, it's definitely something to use.
I agree. And while you were talking, something you said triggered another thought that I had or that I had wanted to ask you about, and that is vantage point. I have played around with a lot of cocktail photos and a lot of angles look, for whatever reason, unnatural when taking a picture of a cocktail. So speak to vantage point. Yours are all pretty consistent in vantage point. What is your trick there?
So my trick is eye level. You want to be eye level to those cocktails. You want your lens to be right at eye level. That means a lot of times my camera is half on the bar, half below the bar. So it's exactly eye level to those drinks. And also like a big wide shot is always good if you have a bunch of different drinks. A lot of times you'll see me post those when I'm actually at an event so people can actually see, oh, look, there's, she's doing a lot. You're above the drinks. It's that weird angle where you're like diagonal to the drink, or sometimes you can make the cup look, like unproportioned. So I would stick with eye level or above eye level.
I think the way that in my head I try and kind of process it is the way you would naturally as a human being approach a glass, right? And so if someone was handing you a glass, it'd be kind of eye level at some point, right? And if you have a bunch of them on the table, you're kind of over top of them when you're preparing them and you're looking at them, right? So you can kind of that's a natural feeling perspective of a drink. Whereas if you kind of get weirdly, down too close and table level, no one's ever looking at a drink, like that. So I guess for me, it's would I approach a drink this way as a human, not just a camera?
Right. I definitely think natural light's key. Also, that's the whole eye level thing. Those drinks, they were still, people's hands are still in it.
That looks like my hand. I'm bringing that to my mouth, right? So that feels natural to me.
Right. You don't want to some people take weird diagonal pictures or too close sometimes isn't good. Definitely below the drink is weird. It's going to make that, it's going to make everything very large.
Right. And disproportionate. Yeah. Some areas of the cocktail will look larger than others in a not natural way.
Right. I live in Florida, so when sometimes I have, a down day that I'm going to be I'm going to photograph, these 5 cocktails. So I can just continue to post, when I need. But Florida's hot, and I know a lot of people live where it's hot. So when I take drinks outside, I never ice them because I don't want that real sweaty glass. It's just not as attractive as a nice clean glass.
The condensation.
Yes.
Yeah. So you touched on one of the 2 pet peeves I have with people who take their own photos, and they're pet peeves because I've fucking done it and I hate those pictures, but they're probably still on my Instagram feed somewhere. And that is 2 things. One, aggressive condensation, which is because it's Nashville here, it's hot and humid in the summer.
Right.
And so like that's going to happen, but, and it'll happen very quickly, but it kind of takes away, like makes it fuzzy on the glass. And so unless that's what you're going for, unless you're specifically talking about like the heat and the condensation and how refreshing this looks, otherwise it just looks like you waited too long to take the picture. The other thing is ice that has died in the glass. It's like melted, half gone, like ice in the glass. And you're like, yeah, you basically spent the last 15 minutes taking a picture of this cocktail and now it's dead in the glass. Right. And it's a total personal pet peeve of mine. And if you look at my Instagram feed, you'll probably find some.
Right. Like this is like a styled shoot in the middle of July. I didn't even bring ice with me. You know what I mean? Like it was just something easy. That's like a good depth of field picture. So the glass is really in focus and everything else is kind of fuzzy, which is that bokeh that we were talking about a little bit earlier. That's kind of what you're looking for. I know, like, I don't like sweaty pictures. I don't want to be sweaty. I don't want my drinks to be sweaty. So I don't even bring ice half the time I'm doing a styled shoot.
Yeah.
All my styled shoots, I never bring liquor. So a lot of times I know what the drink is going to look like, and I'll just try to mock the look of it using juices and sodas and whatever else I can.
I have even used food coloring and water before.
Yeah.
I did an entire shoot where I was doing like a sangria, and I'm like, I'm not using wine for this shoot. And so I just used a bunch of like red, a little bit of green to get kind of like a muddled like red wine color. And then I used like yellow to get like a white wine color. But yeah, no real alcohol. Sometimes I'll feature bottles though, just to kind of.
Right. A lot of times I'll feature local bottles. Jacksonville's like really big on distilleries. All of a sudden they've kind of blown up here. And a lot of times I'll even throw like a local beer can in the back if I can. And that's just getting me to tag more people.
Yeah. And if it's something like, so for us, we almost exclusively do local beers because Nashville has a ton of great breweries. Why would you want to buy, unless you want like a Yuengling or whatever.
Right.
And so it just kind of helps demonstrate the kind of company you are too. And so like being sure to get that stuff in your photos is important because then just by like looking, oh, they support Bearded Iris. That's my favorite IPA. It just kind of gives them a positive, connection that they already have now with you.
Agreed. I think that's a good key is to just always try to keep local products, just like the glasses, like I can tag the person that makes the glasses, I can tag the shop that's local here. It's just easy to do. And then people reshare it, which is great. Right now, everybody's resharing everything. I think if you guys get out there and push recipes, people just don't know what to post at the moment.
I'm going to basically have a day where I'm just shooting a bunch of cocktails with my phone. So this is really good prep for me.
That's fun.
Okay. Aside from your bar cart, let's talk a little bit about surfaces. What tricks or tips or preferences do you have when it comes to like where to put your cocktails?
Anywhere that you don't want something super like patterned or busy, you just want to keep it as simple as possible. I tend to shoot either dark or light. The bar cart that I have set up, I would probably shoot with, but I would definitely, it's just a lot of reflection. So you would have to make sure what's reflecting and what's not reflecting.
Yeah, I definitely like a nice napkin or something, like a piece of cloth.
Right. Definitely like white, the dark wood. You can even buy at like Home Depot or Lowe's, you can buy like the little squares of, I think it's like sample flooring. I've actually like used that. I have a big one that I use as a backdrop for my photography page that I also will shoot drinks on. And it looks like barnwood, but I think it cost me $12 and it's not really barnwood, but it looks like it. And it's nice and simple.
Yeah.
And it's just an easy background. You definitely you want to try to put that drink on the least amount of things you can. Like, so a white top or your bar top or the grass or your porch. Right. Something just mellow, and then fill around it. Like fill in your ingredients around it, your shaker, your strainer, your spoon, anything to kind of add to it. But you definitely want to start with a very neutral, floor backdrop.
Yeah, I love that. So I have like a giant wood tray that I got from like World Market or something that I like to use. But before that, I had like literal floor tiles that I got at Home Depot. They were like just the giant like stone looking floor tiles.
Yeah.
because my countertops in my house, they're the busiest marble I have ever seen in my life. And anytime I try and take a picture on it, I'm like, oh God, like that's all I can look at is like this black and white Dalmatian, granite or whatever it is. So I think that's great. I also tend to like, and you said it, but without specifically saying it, natural material. So wood, grass, your porch, like things that are kind of earthy and natural. And not so much like a hot pink piece of fabric or something, right? That's all one color.
You want that cocktail to stand out. So if you're like putting that on a hot pink background, you're changing the color of that drink.
Right. Yeah. I also am not one to put my drinks on the ground because, again, it's not something that I think people are doing with their drinks.
Right.
Like, they are. But for the most part, I don't want people to assimilate, oh, they stick their drinks on the ground. But if it's my own drink, if I'm like, I'm in the backyard and like, here's my cocktail today, like I'll stick that in the ground. But I specify that it was like, that's not really me. But it is like sometimes the floor is the best place to put it because you're like, I've got these gorgeous wood floors. Like, why wouldn't I use it as a background?
Find your neutral wall and put it on your gorgeous wood floor and definitely use that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So we've talked about surfaces. Let's talk a little bit about garnishes. We mentioned it. I think it's important to maybe specify you want your garnishes to look as fresh.
You should cut your garnish as your drink should be made, and you should cut your garnish and put it on your drink. It needs to be as fresh as possible. There is I use Kiro syrup, Kyro. It's like old school. It's basically corn syrup. Like you can buy it at the store. Yeah. But it's super sticky and it's very shiny. So if I'm going to a shoot that I know maybe I've already cut my garnishes, I don't really know what I'm getting into, I'll bring that with me and I'll coat my fruit with that because it makes everything look fresh. Like you just cut it. It's real like wet looking. And it's a good little trick. A lot of food photographers use it.
What a lovely little pro tip there.
Yeah. And then you can stick, if you're using like dried flowers or I've bought, lavender is a big thing right now. And you can actually get that to stick on the glass or on your garden, on your fruit with using that syrup.
The other thing about corn syrup is that if you're rimming a glass, it does a really nice job of, instead of just put the lime around it. And because sometimes you get like spots where it didn't stick, right? With the Kiro or the corn syrup, that shit's sticking.
Yeah, that shit is sticky. Bring something to wipe it with because it's sticky.
Yeah, it's going to look like the best rim ever, though. It's going to be super full and it'll look great. That's a really great pro tip. I never thought to put it on any of the fruit, though. That's so smart.
It makes it real. It just makes it look really fresh, like really shiny.
Yeah, like you just washed it and stuck it on there.
Also, I know that egg whites are a big thing right now to get that nice foamy layer, but those are still very temperature. You can get a watch, your temperature aspect on that. They can go bad. So you can use, I don't know if people know, you can use garbanzo bean juice, aquafaba, and that does the same thing. Yeah. You can literally just open a can of chickpeas, put it in, shake it, and it still gives you that nice foam. And that I think actually stays better for photos than egg white.
Yeah, I agree. And for those that don't know, because we do have a number of people in our group that aren't of the bartending background, it's always best when you're doing it to dry shake either the egg whites or the garbanzo aquafaba. Dry shake it first in your shaker, then add everything and pour it into the glass because the dry shaking makes it extra foamy. Yes.
And I just use a spoon. Like a lot of times I'll just bring an extra shaker and spoon that out on the top. A lot of people will be like, I'm pouring it and it doesn't look the right way. Well, just shake it to the side, use an extra strainer and just spoon that on top and it'll make that real pretty white layer that everyone's kind of obsessed about right now.
Yeah. No, everybody really does like that, which I am kind of hit or miss as to whether or not I want to fully support that in my photos because then I know they're going to ask me for that.
I don't really do it. I mean, I support it like if you want to, but I'm not a big supporter of egg whites in the mobile setup because it's just a lot to deal with.
It is. You're right. It is a lot. But I think my point in mentioning that is when you're doing shoots or your own kind of cocktail photography, aside from wanting it to be beautiful and gorgeous and delicious looking, make sure you're taking photos of cocktails that you would actually be willing to execute in high volume.
Yeah, don't like your scorpion bowl from the tiki bar is really cool, but unless you want to push 200 of them during service, you probably don't want to put your picture on it.
That's right. Especially the ones that have those like really beautiful, like little like colored toppers. Because if it's not, I mean, I had a wedding with 250 people and they wanted that to be the welcome drink. And that shit just died in the glass by the time they got all up there. But they've seen Pinterest and they've seen Instagram and it looks beautiful in the photos. So awesome. Gosh. Okay. So we talked about portrait mode, backlighting, adding visual interest by styling the shot, adding a recipe to your image on Instagram for added engagement, using macro mode for up close shots, keeping the visuals eye level or of a natural perspective when you're taking pictures of cocktails, using simple and natural surfaces, and making sure that you're using fresh garnishes. And then you gave us that awesome little corn syrup trick.
It works.
Is there anything I'm missing as to like?
I think the only thing with lighting is just no direct light. No
direct light.
I'm in the bright sun and it's going to look great. It's not.
Yeah. No direct light and then natural light. We also said that.
Natural light, no direct light, and try to backlight everything. Other than that, I think we touched on everything. I hope that helps some people that don't know how to start taking drink pictures.
Yeah. The other thing I will say is that if you have exactly one backdrop and exactly one thing to set your drinks on, that's okay. Because some of my favorite cocktail feeds just have the same setup, but with different cocktails. And it adds some consistency in the feed, but also is kind of low maintenance for you.
Absolutely. And if you're styling it, you're putting your ingredients around it and your shakers or whatever, that will always change, depending on what you're making. So I wouldn't really stress out about, I need to have 15 backgrounds. Like you don't, you just want to put a little bit of what's in that drink around the drink.
And that wraps up today's episode. I hope it was valuable. I would love to hear from you what you thought. You can drop me a line at hello@mobilebevpros.com or find me on Instagram @mobilebevpros. If you're looking for more valuable mobile bar related content, we have a website full of it. You can find us at www.mobilebevpros.com. And I'd love to see you in our Facebook community, also by the name of, you guessed it, Mobile Bev Pros. Thank you for joining me today, and until next time, cheers.